Wuhan, Hubei province in central China. Once a thriving metropolis. Now a city of 11 million people on lockdown.
China has instituted the greatest effort to reduce travel that we've seen in modern history.
Across the world, one by one, cities came to a shutdown.
The hugely exponential manner in which it has spread, there is now a sense of alarm.
Medical facilities pushed to the brink amid the urgent call to contain the virus.
We're not trying to stop this outbreak from coming, we're trying to stop it coming quickly.
How did a newly emerged coronavirus manage to hold the entire world at its mercy? Why was advanced medical research not able to combat its spread? And is this merely the start of other potentially unstoppable global pandemics? December 2019 in Wuhan, central China. Something strange was happening to the residents. People were suddenly falling ill. People like Wang Wei's father.
我的爸爸一开始得这个病的话，我们就没有往这个上面想。我的爸爸的症状就是发烧、无力、不想吃饭、没有胃口。然后还有呼吸不是很顺畅。
Thinking it was a bout of winter flu, Wang Wei's family played safe and took Dad to the hospital.
查出来可能是一般的肺炎。
At the hospital, there were a host of cases, just like Wang Wei's father. The doctors were growing alarmed. In a matter of days, experts realized that this mystery flu was in fact a new infectious virus, and one that threatened to spread rapidly.
Scientists in China are trying to determine if a new virus strain is responsible for a pneumonia outbreak in the city of Wuhan.
Scientists around the world hurried into action in a collective effort to understand this new virus, where it came from, how it might behave, and crucially, what could be done to stop it. By late December, Wuhan health authorities had reported 27 pneumonia cases to the World Health Organization. While not all of them were seriously ill, all the victims shared a common link, which raised alarms. The link was a seafood wholesale market in Wuhan, where exotic livestock was also being sold. All the patients had visited or worked there.
Wet market is the most dangerous place, and it's really suited for virus transmission. Scientists have been warning about the danger of the wet market for at least half a century.
And what exactly is that danger? It's that somehow an animal virus makes a giant leap across species into humans.
Zoonotic disease, by the simple definition, means it's animal to human. So in a live market, you can have more than 100 different live animal species traded under the same roof.
In their own quest for survival, viruses constantly seek new opportunities to reproduce and spread, including potential new host species.
Viruses are the perfect intracellular parasites, so to say, because once they gain entry into the cell, it is able to use the host machinery to make more of its own.
But the process of a virus jumping from one species to another is not a simple one. Typically, it ends in failure due to the genetic dissimilarity of the two hosts. Because of the virus's ability to reproduce by the billions, they can mutate and fast. Most mutations won't help the virus into a new target, but by pure chance and numbers, just one lucky mutation can allow it to transition into a new species. Over time, the odds of the virus successfully making the leap will increase.
That's why live market is a dangerous place, because the virus has a chance to make contact with lots of different animals. And by trial and error, if one gets up, will either give to human or further contaminate the whole market through fecal material, urines, blood, because some animals are slaughtered in the market. So I have seen blood, people were using hoses try to hose down blood. That's an incredible way of transmitting the virus.
When a virus transitions from an animal into humans, it can lead to a number of consequences, from the innocuous to the deadly.
There's one that can cause symptoms but doesn't spread further. A good example of that is rabies. A dog bites a human, humans get rabies, they don't pass it on to other persons. Then there's emergence, which occurs sometimes periodically, such as Ebola, which causes outbreaks, sometimes very vicious and serious outbreaks, but then it's controlled, it disappears, and it emerges again. And then there are some viruses which emerge from the animal kingdom into humans and become permanent residents. And a good example of that is HIV infection, which is thought to have emerged actually in the late 19th or early 20th century from a non-human primate into a human.
Scientists in China quickly made a breakthrough and identified the pathogen as a coronavirus.
Under an electron microscope, the coronavirus looks like it has a crown around it. That's why it's called a coronavirus. The crown around it is actually protein that helps the virus enter into human cells. There are actually some which are permanent residents in the human population. They're endemic, and they cause common colds. And then there are others that emerge from time to time from nature, and these are usually coronaviruses that have mutated in such a way that they become more severe infections in humans.
A previous outbreak of a coronavirus threatened the world in 2003, SARS, severe acute respiratory syndrome, that killed more than 700 people worldwide. But despite the experience gained handling the SARS pandemic, scientists were now grappling against this new coronavirus outbreak.
SARS-CoV-2 seems to be more transmissible than SARS, and it spreads during the incubation period, so the period between which a person has been infected but not yet developed symptoms of the virus, whereas SARS did not spread during the incubation period, and that made it somewhat easier to contain.
The experts leading the investigation into the new coronavirus were zeroing in on the Wuhan wet market. Chinese authorities shut it down, and the samples taken there suggested that, like SARS, the new virus may have first originated in bats.
Bats are unique mammals. Now we have around 5,000 living species of mammal, and 20% of them, so every 1 out of 5, is a bat. Bats, as the only flying mammal, they have a very unique immune defense system, so they don't get sick from virus. Fortunately, the transmission of bat virus to human is a very rare event and very difficult. So currently we know that most of the bat-borne virus that cause zoonotic disease in human has to be transmitted through an intermediate animal.
In Wuhan, the focus was now on finding what this missing link could be. Identifying this could help stop any further outbreaks.
There's a lot of speculation about this animal X. So we're talking about most likely a bat virus transmit to an intermediate host, we call it animal X.
Just what animal X is was the subject of wild speculation. Of the possible candidates, some suggested a snake, others a civet cat, and even a pangolin. The science is still unclear, but Lin-Fa Wang is confident of one thing.
You always learn from your experience. That animal X is most likely a mammal.
Scientists were racing to learn more about this novel coronavirus. And on the 11th of February, 2020, the World Health Organization officially named it SARS-CoV-2. And the disease it causes, COVID-19.
I'm declaring a public health emergency of international concern.
Increasingly urgent attempts by nations around the world to contain the spread were proving futile. And with that, a new worry was emerging. The virus was starting to gain critical mass.
viral pneumonia has hit central China's Wuhan city.
查出来可能是一般的肺炎。
Scientists in China quickly made a breakthrough and identified the pathogen as a coronavirus.
SARS-CoV-2 seems to be more transmissible than SARS.
I'm declaring a public health emergency of international concern.
Now coordinating their efforts, China and the WHO were sharing what information they could about the novel coronavirus.
They were able to identify this as a new coronavirus in a much shorter period. But still, there's so many things we still don't know.
The clearinghouse for all the information today is the World Health Organization. And WHO takes that information, sifts through it, makes sure that what they have is valid, and then they do a regular, almost daily risk assessment and the evidence they have and makes recommendations.
It's in control rooms like this one in Manila that the WHO plans its response. For it to work, much depends on countries sharing data effectively.
Typically, what they're looking at is who's getting sick, why are they getting sick, how are they getting sick, and then immediately you already start trying to figure out how do you stop the outbreak.
One way to unlock the secrets of a virus is to look at its genetic code. Within days of disclosing the outbreak, Chinese scientists discovered the virus's genetic sequence and shared it with the world.
What's very important is that since maybe 20 or 30 years, we can now do a genetic sequence of a new virus. That means we can understand how the building blocks of the virus are put in place. And we can also tell, in many instances, where the virus came from and where it's going.
And once we had the genetic sequence of this coronavirus, it was possible to identify that it was very similar genetically. About 80% of its genetic makeup was similar to that of the SARS virus.
But even when there are close genetic similarities between viruses of the same family, this doesn't mean they will necessarily behave the same way.
When you have a 20% difference, that's a lot of difference. So yes, they're related, but in terms of trying to learn from SARS and how to prevent the novel coronavirus, we can use some of the knowledge, but I think we cannot just transfer the SARS knowledge to this coronavirus. And we still have to do the basic science.
The question is, how does that virus manifest itself in humans?
In Wuhan, the novel coronavirus took its first life. The victim was a 61-year-old man who had visited the Huanan wet market. Disturbingly, some 5 days later, his wife, who had not gone to the market, was also confirmed to have the coronavirus. It showed for the first time that the virus was able to spread from human to human, an ominous development. Viruses can be transmitted between individuals in a variety of ways.
Some viruses only spread through contact with blood. Other viruses are what we would call airborne. That's where the virus is able to bind to small dust particles in the air and continue to live on that dust particle for a period of time, such that when it's blown by the wind, it's still there, and that could travel quite a long distance. And there's droplet transmission where you're in relatively close contact to someone, and you may, if they sneeze or cough, you may come into contact with those droplets and become infected.
Early research suggested the new virus could survive outside of the body for significant periods. It could drift, suspended, in the air for hours, and remain viable for days on hard surfaces, such as metal. It was clear to scientists that this novel coronavirus was highly transmissible. Occasionally, one individual turns out to be far more likely to spread the virus than others.
If a person is infected and have a sneeze, for example, they can release hundreds of thousands of millions of virus into the air. Depends on, again, the patient. Some people, when they sneeze, they only release a small number of virus. Others release not large number of virus, and we call these people super spreaders. So if you can infect 1 or 2, that's not a super spread. If they infect more than 10, then it becomes a super spreader.
With cases jumping exponentially in Hubei province and seeping outside of its borders, the outbreak was rapidly escalating into an epidemic.
China has probably instituted the greatest effort to reduce travel from an area that we've seen in modern history, certainly related to an outbreak.
Overnight, Wuhan was transformed into a ghost town. Train stations, normally crowded with commuters, now deserted. Previously bustling restaurants and shops were suddenly emptied. Streets and roads now barren, as Wuhan's residents kept themselves indoors.
When we're dealing with outbreaks of unknown pathogens, so that's the thing you have not seen before, it's better to overreact than underreact. Of course, you have the danger of being claimed to get things wrong, but I think that it's much better to be wrong than not reporting and people dying.
Containing a new and virulent virus is no easy feat, and that task is made even tougher in a city that is also one of the biggest transport hubs in the country.
Wuhan is located almost in the center of China, and it has a very large transportation network going in. And then there is a tremendous number of people which are flying into Wuhan from other parts of China and other parts of the world.
Despite the extraordinary effort to quarantine the city, it did not contain the virus. The virus, it seemed, had its own type of stealth mode, where victims displayed no symptoms in the early stages of infection, helping the pathogen spread ever wider among unsuspecting people.
The reproductive number for this coronavirus outbreak was estimated to be at about 2.6. That assumes that any one person may go on to infect 2 or 3 other people.
As a result, the spread can very rapidly get out of control, particularly when some people aren't displaying symptoms during its incubation period. The novel virus was proving to be far more adept at reproducing itself than even SARS. In just a quarter of the time, SARS-CoV-2 had caused 10 times as many cases.
So we know COVID-19 spreads early in the course of the illness. So SARS would spread particularly in hospitals as patients got sicker and the viral load went higher. This is a different disease. This has mostly community transmission. And it's obviously happening very early, like in the first couple of days. And we've even got examples of it happening before the symptoms started.
The odds were seemingly stacked against the scientists. This was a highly elusive virus, and one that was spreading among people much faster than anticipated. 10 days before the unprecedented lockdown in China to prevent its spread, the virus had already made its first appearance on foreign soil.